Today on the CTV News at 5. It's been another wild weather day across Alberta. We'll tell you what to expect next. Plus, Alberta Health Services does an about-face on care centre decisions. And developments in the search for two missing men in the East Kootenay.
CTV News with Jackie Scantlebury.
Good afternoon. Public Works crews are standing by in case Lethbridge gets hit by another rainstorm tonight. Yesterday, parts of southern Alberta were drenched by a mixture of rain and hail. There have been some reports of basements flooding, most in the south end of the city. Terry Boat caught up with one family cleaning up from the storm.
The water would just start to come and pour down into that area.
For John and Maria Helm, it was a day off work, or at least a day off their regular jobs, to work on cleaning up their flooded basement.
Evidently this had happened to the owner previous to us, and we were under the impression the city had fixed it, and it doesn't look like they have.
The system was just overwhelmed, and unfortunately it can't handle that much rain in such a short amount of time.
It was a deluge, officially just under 17 millimeters of rain and hail in less than 2 hours, but some areas got a lot more. Our viewers showered us with pictures and videos. For the city, the biggest problem was in the area south of Henderson Lake, where children frolicked on streets that quickly turned into small lakes. In some cases, there was so much water that manhole covers were knocked off the storm drains. City officials say with more thunder showers in the forecast, crews are on standby again this evening, prepared to respond wherever necessary.
But again, if it's a high volume of calls and it is a deluge of water, then obviously response times are varied throughout the city, right?
The Helms are also on standby.
I bought a few more pumps.
Hoping they'll be able to stay ahead of the next rainstorm. Terry Vogt, CTV News, Lethbridge.
Watches and warnings are in effect for much of southern Alberta tonight. Dory will have more coming up in weather. But we do have some more incredible video to show you from last night.
Should tell Michelle she should hunker down.
This was taken by Ron and Katrina McCanna. They were just north of Gleason last night and were awfully close as this funnel cloud formed and appears to almost touch the ground. They say it churned for several minutes, eventually splitting into two funnel clouds. Last night's storms, as we saw, also brought hail. Now, just weeks after saying negative changes were on the horizon for our healthcare system, Alberta Health Services has done an about-face. The now boardless healthcare provider is reviewing some recent decisions regarding palliative, home, and continuing care placements. The new administrator, Janet Davidson, has released a decision to cancel home care contracts with 3 Edmonton-based supportive living cooperatives. That has been reversed. As well, the first available bed policy, which required continuing care residents to accept a placement within 100 kilometers of their home, has been withdrawn effective immediately. More coming up in our news. There is a development in the desperate search for 2 missing men in the East Kootenay. Stephen Thompson and Nicholas Huffnagels were camping with friends near Canal Flats on June the 8th. Thompson lived in the area. Huffnagels is from Cochrane. The 18-year-old and 21-year-old were headed into town on Saturday afternoon and haven't been seen since. Search crews were found tracks leading off a dirt road over a steep embankment with the creek below. Some of the men's personal items have been found, but they couldn't see the truck. This weekend, swiftwater rescue technicians were brought into the scene. The creek had lowered just enough they were able to get a visual of the truck in the fast-flowing water.
It's at the top of the falls. It's wedged up against some rocks. It's badly damaged. It's not out of the water. It is submerged. We can't get down to determine if anybody is or is not inside it.
The water is still flowing too quickly, though, for rescue crews to attempt efforts to use an underwater camera that were also unsuccessful. Well, a Fernie man who sparked an international manhunt after an Amber Alert has admitted that he has now admitted to abduction in the taking of his 3-year-old son. He has been given supervised visits. He's pleaded guilty to abduction. Robert Barnett's trial was supposed to begin today, but instead the 40-year-old entered a plea last minute. It was in November of 2012 that 3-year-old Alvin Barnett was taken from a Fernie hotel during a supervised visit. He was taken across the U.S. border and found the next day sleeping in a car with his father in Whitefish, Montana. Barnett was sentenced to time served plus a day, total of 145 days. He was placed on 1-year probation, and he is now working to regain custody of his son. And a dangerous offender hearing has finally been set for a Sparwood man who kidnapped 3-year-old Keenan Hebert from his home in September of 2011. Randall Hopley pleaded guilty to the kidnapping last March. He admitted to taking the little boy from his bed, sparking an intensive search. 4 days later, Hopley returned the child to his home under the cover of darkness. He was arrested shortly after at a cabin in the Crow's Nest Pass. Hopley's sentencing hearing began last July, but because the Crown asked that the court consider he is a dangerous offender, several assessments and reports had to be made. Dangerous offender status means that a criminal has been deemed to be a threat to society and be kept in custody indefinitely. Hopley's dangerous offender hearing will begin October the 7th in Cranbrook in court. Lots of precipitation over the next few days, Dory, but also looking ahead to sunny days on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, and if you remember last week, this is the scenario we were looking at last week as well. Precipitation during the week and then clearing out for the weekend. That's the way it looks right now. We still have, though, some low pressure activity to deal with in BC, and it's churning up a line of thunder cells from the United States into southern Alberta. That's why we have the watches and warnings in place. I'll tell you the details in a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Dory. Some people living in the county of Cardston are raising concerns about a proposed new land use bylaw. Cardston County has just under 4,200 residents, and the new bylaw is meant to replace and update the existing land use bylaw. It's about 15 years old, but some local residents say it goes too far. They contend the 307-page document micromanages what residents can do on their own property. Duncan Thompson is urging concerned residents to attend a public hearing tomorrow night to let County Council know how they feel about the new regulations.
I'm not spearheading any campaign, just we have a little website, and my desire was to have people get involved. And there's been a whole bunch of different little groups that have sprung up, and people's interest has really been alerted.
Over the last few years, we've seen quite a few more developments within the county, larger developments, and things that we were never prepared for and never thought about. So council took the idea of let's look to see what would happen or what we need to do to prepare for the future. And this is what this bylaw contains, some of that, and also how we can help our residents.
A statement of objection has been signed more than 350 people asking council to rescind first reading of the bylaw. Public hearing gets underway 7 o'clock tomorrow night in the county council chambers. Police chiefs around the province would like to see cars impounded if a driver is caught excessively speeding, and our Lethbridge police chief is right on board. Jeanette Rocher has more.
Lethbridge Police Chief Tom McKenzie says the amount of speeders on Alberta highways is alarming.
The excessive speed contributes to death just about always.
He says he's aware of Lethbridge police pulling over drivers in city limits going up to 150 kilometers an hour. He'd like to see police have the power to impound the vehicles of drivers caught going 50 kilometers over the speed limit or higher.
There is absolutely no good reason that anybody, I think, could provide me to be 50 kilometers in excess of the speed limit.
And if a driver is distracted at that speed,
looking at a text can divert you off the roadway at slow speeds. Well, that's just magnified how much at high speeds.
McKenzie says police have come a long way with the crackdown on drunk driving and seatbelt use, but they're not seeing as much of a difference with distracted driving or speeding. One of the problems, he says, is the population growth of the city and more wide use of cell phones.
I think that would be a good penalty. I think people would maybe slow down. That's definitely impounding is a pretty will get the attention of the speeder. So
I wouldn't want my vehicle impounded, but I wouldn't want to be traveling that fast over the speed limit either.
I think it's a good idea because that's crazy and it could kill people quickly.
According to the Lethbridge Regional Police Service annual report, the amount of traffic violations, including speeders, caught last year actually went up in some cases from the previous year. The recently installed speed cameras caught 200 more speeders in 2012 than in 2011.
There's a good place for racing. It's called a racetrack. It shouldn't be the streets endangering everybody else.
Jeanette Rocher, CTV News, Lethbridge.
You may be thinking, how many people actually drive over 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit? Just today, a 67-year-old driver who was caught back in February doing 180 kilometers per hour near Black Diamond was fined and had his license suspended. The reason he was going so fast, told the judge he was drying his car off after wash. Several elementary schools got a taste of First Nations culture today. Some students at Fleetwood Bodden even got in on the action. They were learning firsthand what a powwow is and what it means in Native culture. This is the kickoff of a day-long celebration set aside by the government to recognize First Nations people and their contributions to society.
The main message that we teach to the kids is that powwows are celebrations. They're celebrations about sharing culture, sharing components of the culture, but also that it's there to share with everybody.
Farm TV took a trip to Okotoks to check out the new developments at the Chinook Honey Company and find out what makes the Honeybee Discovery Center so unique. Here's what they found.
And it's something that we've been had in mind for a number of years because our tours are increasing in numbers and size all the time. So this is going to be a great place.
What makes the Honeybee Discovery Center unique?
We have a wonderful display with our Big Bee, which by this time still does not have a name, so we're always looking for entries on names. The Big Bee actually was purchased from the old Calgary Science Center. So it's a full, it's more than scale, it's probably 1,000 to 1 scale, but it's also, as far as entomologists go, totally correct in its design and has the proper shaped legs. It's really actually quite good for us to describe honeybee anatomy.
Packages of honeybees, each containing a queen and 2 pounds of worker bees, can be purchased in the spring to set up new hives. The Discovery Center will be put to good use this summer with a variety of apiary tours, all geared to the specific age range of the group.
Farm TV is brought to you by DA Building Systems.
Straight ahead, Dory's going to tell us what we can expect in the forecast. On the markets today, U.S. stocks ended higher on positive economic reports.